Hey friends, it's Haylene here and I'm back with another video. I've been thinking about the concept of failure quite a bit recently and I just thought I would make a video to share some of my thoughts. Let's face it, nobody likes failure. It sucks, you feel disappointed and sometimes even embarrassed. I've read that in extreme circumstances, this is called a tachyphobia, which is the persistent fear of failure. And I watched a TikTok recently that also resonated quite a bit with me, where people have this crippling fear of failure that results in them often talking themselves out of doing something because they expect that they're going to fail in it anyway when they do it. I've been talking to my mentor quite a bit as well in one-on-ones lately about the concepts of failure and risk tied together. And she said some things that really stood out to me and reframed the way that you could think about failure. What she said was, if you can't really recall a time in your life where you've experienced a really big fail, then have you been putting yourself in risky enough positions? And without putting yourself in risky positions, then how do you expect to grow? We were discussing, usually in job interviews, one of the questions that I hate getting is, tell me about an experience where you failed. Because to be honest, I do struggle with thinking of an experience in my life where there's been a really big failure. And I'm not saying this because I want to come off as someone who's really good and doesn't fail. But if you maybe ask that question to yourselves, you might agree that it is pretty difficult to come up with a really good answer for that. And now I believe that it's not actually something to be very proud of. It's actually more of a wake-up call that maybe you're not taking enough risk or putting yourself in the right positions to learn. That's not to say that there haven't been a sprinkling of experiences in my life, though, that I would classify still as some sort of failure, and so I thought I would share them with you today and open up the conversation, so hopefully this can also change your attitude on how you view failure. My first story is a small one, but I figured maybe let's start with an appetizer and get you warmed up to this idea. So this was really early on in my career and I was still at uni. I was midway through my first internship and on the hunt for what my second summer internship would be. Somehow I had latched onto this idea of I wanted to become a UX designer, and maybe it was because of the creative aspect of it and I just thought of it and I was like, this would be so fun. Once I had decided that, I just went straight for the top. I went onto the Google website, went to their careers, found the application for UX design intern, submitted my application and felt pretty good about it. I don't even know where that confidence came from, but I was like, this one's mine. A couple of weeks later, no phone call, I got the email from Google. It said, we have decided not to progress with your application. And I just felt so disappointed. I was like, what? I'm such a great worker. I'm a great learner. Why wouldn't they want me? And there was so little that I knew. I then spent the next few days thinking to myself, should I call them? Should I email them and get some feedback and try to convince them that I'm the best candidate for this role? I think I did send an email, but I didn't hear back from them. And I don't think I told anyone else about having gone through this application process. I just did it, I got rejected, I never mentioned it because I was pretty embarrassed. Much later on from that process, I was way more woke about how internship applications and all of that works. And I realized they would have never accepted me in the first place because I actually didn't even send in a portfolio in my application for a UX design position. So I'm kind of okay. After a few days, I kind of picked myself up from the initial rejection and I reapplied to Google for an internship in the business department. And I thought maybe I'd be a little bit more suited to this with my current skill set. It would be my foot in and then I could learn more about UX design, meet other designers and gradually kind of shift my way in that direction. As you may know, I did get the business internship and I ended up spending my summer with the best intern group and built my interest in the business side of tech. If you are curious as well, I did vlog part of it. I have a Singapore vlog where the intern group and I spent our last week of the internship going to the Google Singapore office and spending a week there and just having fun. So it's definitely worth a view. That was a mini failure early on in my second year of uni, and it ended in a different kind of success. Not what I had initially set out to do, but I did learn that sometimes your failure is for the best. I've always found that things have a weird way of sorting themselves out, making sense in the end, even though at the time you're kind of like, this is the end of the world. And in this case, it was definitely the best outcome for me because I was not the right fit for the UX role. And instead, I found more of my calling and I had amazing experiences which I never would have had I not failed in the first place. My second story is a really good one. It's another job application story, although this time I was wiser, I was older, and I was exploring a different field of consulting. This would have been third year of uni for me, and I was just getting into more like consulting club, case comps, a corporate path, and we all know how that ended out for me, but just bear with me here because this story is a good one. I decided I was going to go try for another summer internship, and I had already had a few tech experiences under my belt already. So I thought, you know what, this time I'm going to go towards the consulting path, try it out. The one I was keen on was Oliver Wyman, maybe because it was a bit of a smaller company, but it still had like really great reputation. And I had never done any consulting interviews before. So I was kind of like, surely this will be a breeze, they'll just ask me about my experiences at CBA, at Google, at Uber, and we'll just have a chat. In my first round interview, I rocked up at the office, I was trying to feel confident, geeing myself up. There were a lot of other applicants waiting in the office as well, which was pretty intimidating, and they all looked like they knew their stuff. And then when I actually ended up sitting down with the first interviewer, I was like, you know what, I can do this is gonna go great. And then my heart immediately sank when the interviewer asked me, if we were to standardize electrical plugs around the world, what would be the benefit to the global economy? And I was like, excuse me, what? That question remains so traumatic to me that even 5 years on, I still remember it word for word. So I was like, I'll ask for a minute to think about it. I sat there writing the question on my blank piece of paper, and I just remember like underlining random words in that phrase over and over again. And I was like panicking and my mind was just completely blank. And I was like, what is he saying? Like, is this even English? I don't understand what he's asking me. I had absolutely no idea where to even start to answer that question. And I think the interviewer kind of started to sense my despair because eventually he kind of guided me through the entire process of solving that question. And every response I had was just so shaky. Like I could feel the weakness in my voice. And my face was probably really red. I felt like I was going to cry the entire time. And we got to an answer at the end. And to be honest, just like reflecting about it, I'm kind of like, you know what, that process was really fun. It was thoughtful, and getting to the aha moment at the end where you can look back and be like, okay, that's the process that you go to think about some abstract question like that. That was really cool. And then after my behavioral interview that day, I was feeling so ashamed. I remember walking home in my very like corporate gear to the bus stop, and I was telling myself like, I will never let myself go through something like that again. And then before I even got onto the bus, I got a call from the interviewer. And they actually decided to invite me back for a second round interview. I think that's because I surprisingly did quite well in the behavioral part of the interview that morning. Except the interviewer was kind of like, I'm calling you early before this weekend to give you some extra time so you can practice before your interview next week. Because they really thought I needed the practice. Part of me was like, oh my God, I don't want to do that again. Like, just reject me. Like, I don't want to go through that experience. I can't do it. So that weekend, I practiced so hard. Like, I looked up questions, I did practice questions on market sizing, on quant analysis, on estimates, all of that type of stuff. So when I went back the following week, I was kind of like, okay, I got this. Like, I know what to expect this time. But the second round interview was formatted differently from the first round interview. And then this time it was going to be, they give you 40 minutes of preparation time to read through this like sample case. And then you get your time to present back your like insights to a panel of judges. And then after that would be like a follow-up interview with a partner, I think. I remember the case being about a supermarket deciding whether they should make an investment to increase the capacity of their delivery trucks, or like the size of them, And because of what I had experienced so far, I tried to break it down really mathematically into what the incremental space of a truck would be, how many more groceries could they fit in there, how that would decrease trips per week, and then how that might translate to their savings. But as soon as I started presenting that back to the panel, they were like, we don't need you to go through any specific numbers, we just want to know your thinking. And I was kind of like, you don't want me to go through specific numbers? Like, what do you want me to talk about then? Because I've just spent 40 minutes thinking specifically about numbers. For those who are familiar with case interviews, you'll know that what they actually wanted me to do was break down all the factors of consideration for this case into an issues tree. And what that might look like is breaking it down into quantitative and qualitative factors. For example, what might be some of the initial costs and the benefits from the quant side, but also they wanted me to think about more qualitative things like what are the implications for warehousing, for staffing, how does it change the schedule of delivery for the supermarket, fuel consumption, I don't know, other stuff. I did not pick up on that, so I just kind of forged on ahead with my quant insights and my crazy numbers with some assumptions which I just completely made up. It was not great, not my finest moment. And then later I had my follow-up interview with a partner and we had a different case which was about a British bank and their launch into Australia and like where they should start opening up branches and how many of them they should open up. Again, I think I tackled it with more of a quant focus. And I kind of missed the fact that digitization was increasing rapidly and there may be a cost saving to actually opening less to zero banks and actually operating fully digitally. But anyway, I still kind of held hope. I was like, maybe they'll still like me from my behaviorals and they'll want me knowing that I can be a really fast learner. It turned out, unfortunately, that I got the call midday when I was at my sales job. I was at Uber at the time. And I just like took the call in one of the meeting rooms. It started with some like really nice chit chat and it kind of like got my hopes up. I was like, oh, this is like a really good starting conversation. And then they hit me with the, we're sorry, we could not offer you like a position in the cohort this year. And again, I had these feelings of shame, rejection, and disappointment just hit me. I had told my coworkers at Uber that I was going through this application process for my grad job or like my internship. And I didn't really know how to tell them that I had been rejected because I thought it might change how they saw me and it might make them think that I was incompetent or not good enough or not smart enough, even though I had hinged a lot of my value being defined by my intelligence. But I think it all came out that same afternoon because one of my managers just kind of like came up and was like, hey Rach, how did that whole thing with Oliver Wyman go? And I remember just being like, I didn't get it. And then I immediately started crying like in the middle of the office in front of everyone. And it was very embarrassing and I still cringe when I think about that moment. And my team at Uber were like really nice. They were so supportive, but I still couldn't help feeling like a failure at the time. I kind of promised myself to learn from that situation and that I would never go through that same feeling of like humiliation again or like being really caught off guard and not know what to expect in an interview. And so from there on, I actually ended up putting a lot more preparation into my interviews, trying to anticipate the different kinds of questions they might ask me, going to case workshops, putting myself in positions where I could build my confidence in kind of speaking on the spot. And during the whole interviewing journey at McKinsey, the one thing that was driving me the entire time was just remembering the feeling that I had after going through that Oliver Wyman application process and telling myself like, whatever happens, just don't embarrass yourself like that again in an interview. And that was like my main driver. It wasn't even like, I need to get this job, I want to work here so bad. It was literally like, don't look like an idiot in front of these interviewers. But from this story, I think what I learned is I can use failure as a mechanism for future success. I learned a lot about what not to do. And from that, I kind of fueled my future motivation and discipline by remembering like the emotions that I had gone through in this experience. And then my last failure story was over a prolonged period of time, and it has to do with what some of you might know as Keo Box. For those of you who don't know, Keo Box was a side project, an Asian beauty subscription box, which I ran for a little over a year during my uni days. It evolved from initially being fashion and beauty subscription box to then just an Asian beauty subscription box, and then eventually was like an Asian sheet mask subscription. I haven't spoken about this much since I closed it, and I don't even think I mentioned this much when I was running it either, but the entire time I was very anxious and always scared that nobody was going to buy the product. And the tough thing about subscription models without actually implementing subscription model in your tech is that there is always a buy decision at the beginning of every month. So it makes it even more difficult to get returning customers. It felt really real to me because I had promoted it so much across like my social circles, and basically I was staking almost like my personal brand on this as well because it was so tied to just like my social media. And what people didn't know openly, I guess, was it wasn't doing that well. And so anytime a friend would really nicely ask me like, oh, how's Keo Box going? I would always feel really awkward or like not want to say that much about it because I just didn't know what to say. Like it wasn't going great. And even more so when I ended up recruiting 3 other friends to work with me on a team to build out the marketing, the social media, and the content creation, that kind of put a lot more pressure on it. It pretty much felt like the blind leading the blind here because I had no idea what I was doing. But when it was by myself, it felt like there was a lot less risk because it was just, my own funds that I was putting on the line. Whereas when a team had joined, I did feel worried that I would be wasting their time. I knew that I could encourage like friends to buy the box month on month, but that is just not a sustainable way. And it's a little bit like shameful as well because I didn't want to be a sellout. I didn't want to just like be that annoying friend who every month is like, are you going to buy Keo Box? Because I don't think that's the way that you grow a business either. But at the same time, I probably didn't spend enough investment into marketing it outside of the immediate like social circles that I had. In the end, I decided to close up the shop. I wrote a blog post about it, and that was because I kind of recognized at that point like I needed to either go really all in and put way more time and commitment into it than I had, or close it. And during that time, like my friends were starting to get some meaty internships. I was diving into like back-to-back internships that summer as well. And I kind of thought, well, it might just not be the best time right now to do this. In the end, still feels like a great idea. Like you see some really successful sheet mask subscriptions out there, just wrong execution. But the great thing that came out of this was I actually referenced this experience so much and like the types of things that I learned from it in my job interviews. And I think it's partly why I was able to land a job at Atlassian. Looking back, I just think I learned so much about leading a team, building a product, doing marketing, and kind of like running a business where you actually have funds on the line. I'm proud of it and I genuinely enjoyed the journey, even though the outcome of it was a failure. And I think my learning out of this story is what may feel like a failure as an outcome should be reframed as a success in the journey. There are so many times where things don't quite work out or they don't turn out how you expect them to be, but you actually learn an infinite amount more in that experience because it's just new and uncharted. So take those risks, embrace the failure so long as you are actively trying to learn from them, and just enjoy the ride. So those are 3 stories from my life where I've experienced some form of failure. Just to do a quick recap, the 3 learnings that I got from those experiences were firstly, sometimes failure is for the best. Secondly, you can use failure as a mechanism to drive yourself to succeed the next time. And thirdly, even if the outcome is a failure, see if you can classify the journey as a success. I'm really curious. Drop in the comments below times where you failed and what happened after that. I would love to hear your stories as well. And I guess the more that we share and we can open up this conversation, the more that we can normalize it. So thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this chatty video. As usual, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. And I will see you next time. Bye. Smiling every date with Hey Linny.